Young American men are apparently very lonely, at least according to recent Gallup data.
They're lonelier than young American women and young men of other Western countries.
Gallup asked respondents if they felt lonely for the majority of the previous day. 18% of all adults answered yes. 25% of men aged 15 to 34 answered yes, compared to 18% of women in that same age group. 15% of men aged 15 to 34 from 38 other democratic, mostly higher income countries said they felt lonely the previous day. And 16% of women in that same cohort said the same.
The results are based on aggregated Gallup World Poll data from 2023 and 2024. Harvard University lecturer Richard Weisbord, who has studied loneliness, told the Washington Post, "It's miserable to be lonely. It's a sign of societal failure too. Like we're not taking care of each other, and that should concern us."
The only other country that ranked higher in loneliness among younger men was Turkey at 29%. Look, obviously there's a huge topic, Stephen. It seems to me that young men are facing something of a crisis of identity in this country. Possible reasons why it's more severe in this country could be perhaps the sort of material, the search for material success, often young people in particular, desiring fame or wealth that only a very small proportion of the population ever achieves. But there is also the argument that we're becoming more disconnected from each other in an age of social media. It's becoming more of an atomized society. I'm not making light of it at all. I think loneliness is a tough thing, and I think men traditionally have a bit more difficulty making and maintaining close friendships than, at least it seems to me from my own experience, women do.
Yeah, where to begin? I think I'll begin with the personal, which is that, I'm 35 years old. I think it's really, really hard. I've got a teenage daughter, and when you are a young parent, you're kind of like, oh, most of my peers haven't even had their kids yet. And then the older parents who are in their 40s, you just kind of don't have as much in common when you're 45, scratching 50 as when you're in the middle of your 30s. And it's just hard to form friendships. And every time, I've struggled to actually get men in my life, whether at the gym or at coffee shops or in, career circles, to actually be friends on a deeper level than doing small talk and backslapping. It's very hard. Men are not very good at it.
Right.
It is a struggle that I think we are uniquely challenged by. Yeah. And men tend to have very large social circles where they know a lot of acquaintances, but they're social circles of people that they identify as close friends. They're quite small compared to women, who will usually have smaller circles broadly, but then they will have more people that they identify as close. And you could say that they open up more. You could say that men are just generally closed off. Something doesn't work, and it does hurt people and make them feel isolated.
No, it does. And in that isolation, all sorts of unfortunate patterns can take hold, whether that's unease turning inward in terms of substance use,
anxiety, pornography, substance abuse,
all of those kinds of things, or it can just make people feel alienated from society. To reciprocate your personal note, although I'm no longer a young man, but I mean, in terms of friendships that I would have, I would say like the longest friendship I have is with a guy who I went to high school with, and we've been friends since we were 13. But setting that and a guy who was my roommate 20 years ago back in the day, setting those two aside, most of my close friendships are actually with women. And I don't really know why that. I mean, I find, often just conversations with women can be more.
I guess because you like to talk. I mean, you and me both, we are in the television business. We like to talk. We explore complex issues. We like to talk about when we are right and wrong and question ourselves. And look, just anecdotally, that's not a thing that a lot of guys like to do. It just isn't. I mean, every time I go to the gym, I'm a rock climber and hang out with guys, and they just want to talk about the sport. They want to talk about the weightlifting. They want to talk about form and all this stuff. I'm like, my God, how are you doing? Tell me about you. And I think that's just something that most women are more inclined to talk about personal issues. And I don't really want to talk about the mechanics of sport. And it does remind me of this viral video from 2023. And this involves, and this is an interesting way to frame this, but this involves a trans man, so a biological woman who transitioned to living as male, spent 8 years in this life, and then posted this viral video of how hard it has been living as a man, crying. I want to roll the video here because it actually just really moves me.
How we treat men is like so dangerous to men, because nobody told me how lonely being a man is.
Most people should go and search out his James Barnes video. And I think the reason that this video hits me so hard is that we are talking about, and I'm just going to speak in my terms, we're talking about a female who's living the life of a man and going, this is really like hard. People don't want to connect. The kind of conversations that I used to have with people, guys don't want to have them. Every time you try to go out and get to connect with somebody over a beer on a deeper level, it's awkward. They never want to go a layer deeper. And I think that that speaks to biological differences and predispositions that just are really, really hard for us to grapple with, particularly in modern society that keeps us cordoned off into working at home, working in our home offices, not working side by side together as much as we used to. It's hard for men.
Yeah, it's, without getting into the whole trans issue, firstly, that video, I agree, is moving. You know, the whole nature versus nurture, what's a biological difference versus what is a societal outcome. You know, we'd be here all day if we started in that. It is certainly true that men, certainly of my generation, I think we were raised with the idea that it was unmanly to show emotion, certainly unmanly to show emotional distress unless you were like literally in danger of being killed or something. And so that, I think, can lead to, on one level, I don't want to belittle qualities like stoicism, which I think is something that men were sort of imbued with, and I think was valuable, and I think has been lost to some extent. But it also did, I think, lead to a sort of emotional stiltedness sometime that was unhealthy, and that, you know, many of us, including myself, have to work through.
There are all these groups now that have formed around addressing this issue that are like men's clubs that are all about, there's like this group called F3, and then there's another group that focuses around fire pits, where you basically apply to this club to get a free fire pit, and you're supposed to start a men's organization because men have better conversations around a fire. But it's so true. It's just true of all my experiences where you're trying to like connect with your guy friends, and you just, the scenery just has to be right, and sometimes the crackling fire is like all that it takes.
It's more manly then to have those meaningful conversations.
Yeah, than the coffee shop, right? It's like the coffee shop conversation is just going to be a little different. You sit in silence around the fire pit until somebody wants to break the silence and talk. And I think the reason, like you mentioned, like older generations and kind of this inclination towards stoicism, they say that younger people of my generation are maybe a little more emotional, and I still don't understand, though, why most people my age don't want to connect and form bonds. And I think it's because there's a time suck in our economy. These phones that have taken up so much of our free time, the amount of time that you are pouring into managing your likes and your comments on Instagram could be poured into a relationship with a guy at church or at your local gym. But that is time that is lost, and time is limited.
Yeah. And do you think... Finally, Stephen, do you think that is why in this poll it shows young men in America more lonely than in other developed nations? Because I was kind of puzzling over that, to be honest. Why would young men in America be lonelier than young men in Britain?
I have an answer for that, yeah. No, it might have something to do with just the layout of our civilization here. I mean, we talk all the time about how we're a driver culture, we're a suburban culture. Most people, though they do live in cities, we're still very spread out as a people. We're not like living in walkable towns and walkable cities where there are hubs of community gathering like you might experience in Europe. And it's the limited travel that I've done abroad. I think that that holds pretty true. We just don't have these sort of recreational centers that draw people together. Declining religiosity in the United States, though there has been a recent uptick. This is a place where you would form just basic social bonds, people that you can call and be part of a club with. You know, the Boy Scouts has been just in absolute turmoil for a decade now. I'm still a scoutmaster myself. And as an assistant scoutmaster in my troop in Virginia, I gotta tell you, the boys are not okay. We do have a girl troop in our division as well, so there are Girl Scouts in BSA. And the girls are doing so great. They socialize well. They take care of one another. They live the scout oath and law so much better than young men do. But it's because most of their free time is not spent riding around on bicycles. It is spent at home, connecting on social media and via the Xbox. And that does have a corrosive effect, particularly on young people's ability to form deep friendships.
That's as good a theory, or better, than I could come up with. We have a lot more topics for manly conversation to talk about on Rising right after this.